In the beginning of Parshas Toldos, we hear that he is a man of the field. Bereshis chapter 25, verse 27, where the two young children grew, and Esav was a man that knew hunting, man of the field, and Yaakov was a simple person dwelling in tents. The Targum Aramaic translation says that Esav was Gvar Nachashirchan. Nachashirchan, the very word Nachash is in the Targum, explaining that he was a person who entrapped people, like the Yetzirah, like the serpent, with bad suggestions. So, a way to understand the struggle between Yaakov and the angel is that the angel is really the embodiment of the serpent. And when HaKadosh Baruch Hu cursed the serpent, Genesis chapter 3, he said to the serpent, I'm going to put hatred between you and the children of the woman. Genesis chapter 3 verse 15, I shall put hatred between you and between the woman, between your seed and her seed. He, namely the human being, will strike you on the head, and you will strike him on the heel. The human being, if he sees a snake, he tries to stamp on its head. And the snake, if it sees a human being, tries to bite into his legs, because the snake knows that if he can bite into the leg, the poison will go all the way up the system. Everybody knows now from reflexology how what you do on your feet and your legs actually spreads up the system. We just saw how the sciatic nerve goes all the way from the spinal cord down the leg. And what happens down, if some infection, some bite enters from the bottom, then all the energy coming up the body is all negative energy. So we're seeing that the angel in our parasha Vayishlach, who hits Jacob on the hip, is precisely the Nachash who bites the heel, because the heel and the hip are part of one system. Well, now, we know that there are 248 positive mitzvahs, mitzvahs aseh, ramach, mitzvahs connected, ramach evorim, 248 commandments corresponding to 248 limbs of the body, and 365 sinews, we are taught, corresponding to the 365 prohibitions of the Torah, lo yisaseh. So, the sinews of the body, this phrase sinews is in Hebrew the gidim. The word gid in Hebrew may cover veins and arteries, or it may cover the nerves. The Torah is very particular that we are not allowed to consume blood, and the butcher has to know exactly how to remove the veins and arteries of the body. But the 365 sinews include not only the veins and arteries, but also these nerves. But only one of the nerves of the body is forbidden to be eaten, and that is the sciatic nerve of the animal. And because of our parasha. Well, now the 365 prohibitions and the 365 sinews of the body correspond to the 365 days of the year. And with that, we will now be able to hear from the Holy Zohar how the sciatic nerve is actually directly bound up with the whole concept of the destruction of the temple. Because just as the sciatic nerve in the human anatomy is what is enabling, in a proper state, energy to flow from the upper part of the body downwards for the person to accomplish their purpose. And if it's in a state of damage, the person can't function. So likewise, the perfect state of the world is when the Beis HaMikdash is enabling all the energy to come into the world. And if there is any flaw in the Beis HaMikdash, the whole world is flawed. And of the 365 sinews of the body, which correspond to each day of the year, we shall be hearing in a moment from a passage from a section of the Zohar that the sciatic nerve is corresponding to Tisha B'Av, the day of the destruction of the temple, because the Malach wanted to destroy the temple. The first temple and the second temple were both destroyed as a result of Israel's sins, and that was where the Malach was able to get at Jacob. And this is actually all alluded to in the whole concept of the very words of the Git HaNoshe and the all bound up with the destruction of the temple. Let's first hear from the Holy Zohar, from a section known as the Midrash Ne'elam, the concealed Midrash in the Zohar of Vayishlach. The Zohar is commenting on the verse we just read from our parsha. For that reason, the children of Israel will not eat from the sciatic nerve, because the angel hit the thigh of Jacob in the sciatic nerve, and one is not even allowed to benefit. You can't, for example, sell it to a non-Jew. It's actually inedible. I mean, it's totally tasteless, but even so, you couldn't use it for any kind of fiber or anything. And you're not even allowed to throw it to a dog. So why is it called this Gid Anoshe? It's called the Gid is the sinew, which is Nasher. That is to say, the sinew that makes people forget the worship of God. It's an expression in Hebrew. The root of Noshe is, as in Menashe, Joseph named his son Menashe because he made me forget my. It's a matter of this part of the body makes a person forget Avodas Hashem. And suddenly, it happens if a person is in great pain. They could really wonder how they could possibly serve Hashem even. And this is the place where the Yetzer Ra is sitting, there in the sciatic nerve. And once this angel got attached to Jacob, he did not find any place where he could overcome Jacob, because all of the limbs of Jacob's body were so perfected. They all helped one another. They were all very strong. There was no weakness. So what did he do? He touched him in the sciatic nerve. The angel found the very part of the human body that corresponded to the same spiritual root of the angel, namely the serpent. He went to his own clansman, his own place, and it is from that point that the Yetzer Ra spreads out into a person. That's why we say that the wicked run on their feet to do evil, because it's the energy coming from this nerve down the legs. And that is why the Torah says that the children of Israel may not eat from the sciatic nerve, as the companions of Rabbi Shimon said, that all of the limbs of a person allude to something heavenly. If it be something good, then it's an allusion to good, or if it's bad, to bad, because each and every other limb gives strength to something in the person, and the Gid HaNoshe, the sciatic nerve, gives strength to the evil inclination, which is from the same root. And for that reason, the children of Israel will not eat it, because it's not from their holy side. It's not appropriate for them. But the nations of the world, the idolaters of the world, will eat the sciatic nerve, because that is their side of creation. That is the side of their angel, which is the angel known as the Samach Mem, because that is how it gets into them. Because there's 248 limbs in a person to receive the 248 positive commandments of the Torah and to accomplish them, and there are angels which are clothed in the limbs of the body when a person fulfills a mitzvah, and that brings the presence of the Shekhinah into the person. But the person has 365 sinews corresponding to the 365 prohibitions of the Torah, which is forbidden to do, and the 365 prohibitions correspond to the days of the year, and Tisha B'Av is one of the days of the year, and that day of the year corresponds to the Samach Mem, the angel of death, who is one of the 365 angels ruling over the year. And that is why the Torah says the children of Israel may not eat from the Gid HaNoshe, and the pasuk says, Lo yochlu b'nei Yisrael es Gid HaNoshe. Es, the Hebrew word es is darshaned over there, that comes to include in the verse Tisha B'Av, that they should not, on which the children of Israel don't eat or drink. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed be He, saw everything and gave this allusion to Yaakov. Vayeovek ish imoy, a person was struggling with him, and each of the days of the year, in all of the limbs of Yaakov, he could not find any place to get his hold except for the Gid Anoshe. We can actually see in the very word Gid, we just heard the Zohar said that it is the Hebrew word in the pasuk Es that alludes to Tisha B'Av. The word Gid is made up of the letter Gimel, which is the third, corresponding to the fast of Tzom Gedalia, which is the third of Tishrei. The Yud corresponds to Asura B'Teves, which commemorates the destruction of the temple, and the gematria of Gimel Yud Dalet is 17, which is Shiva Asar B'Tammuz. So that way we have the 4 fasts all alluded to in this narrative in the Torah. For it was there precisely on the day of Tisha B'Av that the decree was made against the Beis Hamikdash, and anybody who eats on Tisha B'Av, it's as if he ate from the Gid Hanoshe. Well, now we have to see how all of this is relating to Hanukkah, because the Kabbalah tells us that the whole tikkun of Hanukkah is precisely in the Sfirot of Netzach and Hod, which is our main preoccupation on Hanukkah. We're constantly praising God's victory over the Greeks, which he gave to the Chashmonim, to the Kohanim, that is Netzach, victory and conquest, which was given to the Torah. And how did the sages choose to celebrate? Through Hod, through Thanksgiving, through saying of Hallel, of Nisim, and all the praise of Hanukkah. And these are the tikkun, the repair of the Beis Hamikdash, and that is why Hanukkah is actually a repair for this whole situation where the top and the bottom of the body have been thrown out of alignment. Now, before we go on to Hanukkah, I'd like to just develop how fundamental all of this is to the Torah view of the world, because the legs support the body, and the Torah scholars support the Torah. Without the study of Torah, there can be no Torah. You have to have people studying it, and im ein kemach ein Torah. If there's no flour, there's no Torah. If there's no support for people to sit and learn Torah, they cannot learn. There is a flaw in the legs. Now this links up with the king of Judah by the name of Melech Asa. King Asa was a great-grandson of Shlomo HaMelech. Shlomo had Rechavam, who had Aviam, whose son was Asa, the 4th king after Shlomo. Well, by that time already the northern kingdom was attacking the house of David in Jerusalem, and Asa was so busy fortifying Judah that he even had to say to the people in the yeshivas, you've got to join the army now. You have to come out of the Beis HaMikdash and you have to go out into the field and fortify the country. We can't give any more subsidies to yeshivas. We have to stop this and get out there. And Asa became ill in his legs. Tanakh tells us that Asa actually died of this terrible leg illness, which spread right up to his head. In other words, his flaw was in undermining the support system of the Torah, and for that reason he was punished with this terrible punishment. And all this links up with our situation today, where the money of the Jewish world is simply devoted to theaters and to cultural centers and to hospitals for pets and for all kinds of other very worthy projects, but the monies that are actually given for the study of the Torah and the spread of the Torah, I don't necessarily mean that everybody has to study the way Torah is studied in Bnei Brak, but the funding that should be available is not available at all. And this is also part of the flaw of the serpent striking Jacob precisely where the energy is supposed to come down from above down below. He won't let it down into the